We are going to get started here with our first speaker. How many of you have heard of Movember? Yeah. So Adam Garone will open us up here. He built Movember into one of the most innovative charities changing the face of men's health. Started his career as an officer in the Australian Army, where he was selected and served with the Commando Regiment in the Special Forces. I think this is another key success measure to him as an individual. He, and alone with the Movember movement to date, have 18 million donors. How many of you need those? Yeah, 18 million donors, raising over $370 million to change the way that prostate testicular cancer is researched and diagnosed, as well as how mental health is in men and boys is treated. Before Adam comes out here, I want to give you a little bit of insights into the Movember movement.
Good morning. I'm here to talk about the most unlikely of marriages, the moustache, the month of November, and men's health, and how this movement was created and beyond that sustained, and both are really important. Movember started in a really non-traditional way in terms of charities and foundations. It really started about bringing back a fashion trend. And my brother and a mate walked into a bar in Melbourne in 2003 on a Sunday afternoon, and they were talking about fashion and trends and how over time things always come back into style. A few more beers and the day and the conversation turned to what hasn't come back and what was well overdue to make a comeback. So this is 2003, well before the ironic hipster moustache trend. And they thought, our dads had them, our sports stars had them, our movie stars had them back in the day. Why had the moustache never made a comeback? So the first I heard about Movember was an email from my brother, and the subject was, "Are you man enough to be my man?" I was like, that's a really interesting email to get from your brother. And it went on to say, it's time the moustache made a comeback. And really the first year we did it, 2003, was an excuse to have two parties, an opening party at the start of November to prove that we were clean shaven, and then most importantly, an end of November party, which was moustache themed to see A, if we could grow them, and then B, who had the best and worst moustache. And it was really interesting to put yourself out there to grow a moustache. We were literally the only 30-year-olds growing moustaches at the time, and the response was interesting and amazing. People would ask, what's with the moustache? My boss wouldn't let me see clients. My girlfriend at the time, is no longer my girlfriend, hated it. And it was even walking down the street, women with children would usher their children in a little bit closer as you walk past. And any movement needs a purpose, it needs an injustice to rally around. And four of us got together in 2004 after this experience and thought, how do we put the power of a conversation that is created by growing a moustache and changing your appearance to that extent to good? And none of us had any charitable experience whatsoever, and I think that served us really, really well initially, that naivety around how a charity should be ran and marketed. And we thought, well, growing a moustache is a male-only pursuit. Let's do something for men. And all of us are engaged to a certain degree with breast cancer through the women in our lives. And we just thought, well, there's nothing for men and men's health. And we actually didn't think it was an issue because there was no focus on it. And then we started to dive into the issue, and whilst we've made really great progress, men still on average die 6 years younger than women, and there's no biological reason for that. So right from the get-go, Movember was about men's health, and along the way, Luke, one of the co-founders, come up with our tagline, which was changing the face of men's health, which eloquently describes the challenge, which is to change your appearance over the course of the month, and also change your perception and thinking around the issue. And as we dove into it, we wanted a single fundraising focus. And off the back of a very limited knowledge of breast cancer, we focused on cancer and discovered, to our shock, that prostate cancer affects as many men as breast cancer does women. And we thought, there's so many great campaigns, initiatives, events for breast cancer, but nothing for prostate cancer. So that became our initial fundraising focus, and I remember distinctly meeting with the CEO of the Prostate Cancer Foundation in Australia, and this meeting got replicated with the CEO of the Prostate Cancer Foundation in the US and in Canada and the UK and New Zealand and around the world, and all the meetings sort of went the same way. And it's like, for this grand idea and vision to get men growing moustaches across Australia or America or Canada, wherever it was, raising awareness for men's health and funding for your foundation. And the response was always exactly the same. It's a really novel idea, Adam, but that will never work because, you know, our community that support prostate cancer are older men and their families, and they'll never be into this. And that was one of the key things for us, was that persistence all along the way. No matter what anyone said to us, we persisted because we had this grand vision and we knew we could make it a reality. And no matter what it is that you do, whether it's creating a movement, an organization, it is the most important characteristic of an entrepreneur, is that grit and determination to persist no matter what anyone is telling you. So initial focus became prostate cancer. In 2004, we cobbled together a website, and we had 450 men, supported by the lovely women in their lives, doing Movember, and 450 people raised $54,000. And we donated that all to the Prostate Cancer Foundation. It was the single biggest donation that they'd received. I then left Australia, came over here to the US, and we decided that if we stayed in Australia with a population of 24 million people, we were only ever going to raise a certain amount of money. And these are global issues. So we used money that was raised in Australia to fund the launch of the Movember organisation around the world and in 21 countries. And the statistic on the video and in the introduction were both wrong. Movember to date has raised $750 million and is now the biggest global funder of prostate and testicular cancer research, and also mental health with a specific focus on men and boys. So prostate cancer was our first cause. And then what we realized early on was our most passionate supporters were young men that were survivors of testicular cancer. A rare but most common common cancer for young men. And so we decided to add testicular cancer to the mix. And I'm really proud to say, because of our global reach, we've been able to unite and bring together the prostate and testicular cancer communities. We've made more progress with both of those diseases in the last 5 years than in the last 50. And we're on a path to effectively curing them. We're not about an Australian cure or an American cure. We don't care where the cure comes from. There won't be one cure, there'll be many. Survival rate for testicular cancer is up around 95%, but still 1 in 20 cases for a young man. The cancer will come back, they'll become resistant to the treatment, and it'll take their life. So we've resurrected a clinical trial throughout Europe and made that global. We've brought together a bunch of scientists to discover why that happens, and once we figure that out, we'll have effectively cured that disease. Prostate cancer, more common, more complex, but we're on the same path. And within 15, well, our aim is by 2030 to have effectively cured that disease. Neither of those diseases, thankfully, had sort of affected us directly. I often get asked, given it was my brother and I and 2 other mates that started Movember, they say, hey, was your dad sick from prostate cancer? Was that the reason you started Movember? And it's like, no, he just had a really sick moustache back in the day, and that was more the reason why we started Movember. But one issue that did affect us was we had, between the four of us, a number of mates that took their life. Late teens, 20s, and even more recently. And obviously that affects men and women, but 3 out of 4 suicides are men. It's very much a gendered issue. And one of the big contributors to the 6-year age difference between men and women. And whilst our organisation and personally, my life's ambition has become around men and men's health, I'm also a feminist. And I firmly believe that if we can get men, inspire men to be better partners and fathers and friends, and to live happier and healthier, longer lives, that will only and naturally flow on to women and women's rights and women's health, and therefore lift the whole community. So from a moustache essentially sparking a fashion trend, we then focused on the fun in fundraising, and we really played on the sort of the extrinsic motivators around being part of this trend, discovering it. We built in a whole bunch of gamification around who had the best moustache, who raised the most amount of money. But that can only take you so far. And what we realized a number of years ago is that for us to sustain this movement, we had to focus on the impact that we're having. And to have that impact, you obviously need the funds. So we've brought the cause right to the fore now, and our tagline last year and this year will be, "Men are dying too young." And for all of us, whether you're a man or a woman, can have a role in changing that. So that's been a really important transition in the evolution of Movember and how we've marketed it from, a fun, irreverent, let's do it with your mates, do it at work, have some fun, raise some money, have a party at the end, to now the impact and putting that first. One of the really important things about anything that you do is standing out in the crowd. And we were at our best. Movember was at its best when we were loved and we were hated. A lot of people hated Movember, hated the moustache, hated men growing moustaches. But people were talking about us. And no matter what you're starting, what you're doing, from the get-go, if people aren't talking about you, if they're not noticing what you're doing, you've essentially failed from the start. So you have to stand out from the crowd, and that gets particularly hard given all of us now have a platform and a voice with which we can broadcast through. And it becomes really tough for us now as we evolve as an organisation. We need to keep pushing the boundaries and getting either ambassadors or doing stunts or keeping the edge with which we started. This is a really important point. Movember started because there were 4 of us, and we were able to influence and inspire a room full of people, 30 people in Melbourne, Australia. The next year, that group of people went on to inspire a state and then a country, and then beyond that, we left Australia and created a global movement. But it all starts with a group of committed people. And Margaret Mead, an American, once said that never underestimate a small group of committed people to change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So when you think about a movement and starting a movement, it starts with you and rallying a small group of committed people that share your vision of whatever it is you want to change. So I've got 3 seconds left. That's it. Thank you.
We'll go ahead and have a seat. All right, so we're going to spend some time with Adam here. If you have any questions, make sure you put those into mcon.socialqa.com. For those that are watching online, it's just right below the viewer. One of the first questions is, who is your biggest supporter? They're going right for the money.
I'd have to say my mum and dad. Not financially, but there's 2 of us, 2 brothers, and the night, I remember this distinctly, we went home and we'd been doing Movember a little bit, and we told them that I was quitting my secure corporate job to work in Movember, and Trav was going to do the same thing, and it was like, what the hell are you boys doing? Are you going to grow moustaches? That's your business? So But yeah, Mum was our early sort of finance person volunteering there, so yeah, they're the biggest supporters.
Good. Talk about the board a little bit. Somebody mentioned there's some craziness maybe. In the board, it said here, and scaling, or I'm sorry, not board, beard craze as well.
It's like there's craziness on the board. We've got a board meeting tonight. It's like
we walked over, and he said, I got this board meeting from like till 2 a.m., right?
Yeah, it starts at 6 p.m. tonight to 2 a.m. given the time zones because a lot of the board are back in Australia. So yeah, I hope there's no craziness.
So no, the beard, it said, can we blame them for all the current beard craziness?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we definitely sparked a trend in facial hair. And I remember, I think it was 2012, the Procter & Gamble CFO gets out there and said, there's, Gillette their sales are down by a couple $100 million, and blamed it on Movember in a public announcement. Little did he know they were also sponsoring Movember. It's like, come on, man. And then, yeah, the next day the headline was, Movember wipes off $400 million off the Procter & Gamble share price because guys just weren't shaving. And 2012-13 was the height of the moustache trend, and then beyond that, beards have come on trend. I think, like everything, we'll go back to more a clean-shaven look.
What's more important to your financial success, many small contributions or large corporate commitments?
Oh, by far, it's small contributions. So, we've had 18 million donors. I think the average donation is around $60 or $70. With the focus now on our programmatic impact and some of the unique things we're doing at a global level, we're certainly going after now essentially rich people or corporates to go, hey, here's this great program, we've funded it to this extent. To continue this, would you like to contribute $1 million? But Movember is very much a grassroots movement. A lot of people contributing a little bit. And beyond the money, the other great thing about Movember, which I value more than the money actually, is the conversations that are created. And we always get asked, why don't you just create a pin and everyone can wear a moustache pin on the 1st of November? And it's like, that doesn't create a conversation. For a guy to go the month, and I didn't realize this when I came across to America, one of your most important holidays, probably the most important holiday, is at the end of November. We'd always get these guys calling and emailing us going, hey, it's Thanksgiving. I don't want to go home looking like a dodgy porn star. What should I do? And of course, we would always say, keep it and have a conversation. And then the other side of Thanksgiving, we'd get so many emails and thanking us and going, for the first time ever, because of the dodgy moustache, the table conversation turned to men's health, and they learned their grandfather had prostate cancer, and in some cases, the young guy at the table prompted the dad to go and get checked and was found to have it and things like that. So the conversation in any movement is so important to break down stigmas or to raise awareness about a particular cause, and then obviously the funding is important to follow through on that.
So let's talk about some of the engagement over time. One of the questions, the top question right now is it challenging to maintain engagement now that the movement is more mature from the early days? Because it was exciting, it was trendy, it still is, but how have you gone forward with now engagement?
Yeah, it's been really interesting. Initially, our brand challenge was to make people aware of Movember and what it is and to do it. And there was that discovery phase. And we were certainly on trend and helped start that trend. On the other side of it, what we've done now is we're absolutely putting the cause first, because that hasn't gone off trend. Men are still dying 6 years younger than women, and we need to do a lot of work as a community to inspire men to live happier and healthier and longer lives. And again, I say that holistically, because if we can do that, that's only going to flow on to women's rights and women's health, and it's so important for our kids and our community to do that. So putting the cause first is the big fundamental shift for us over the last couple of years, because that, as I said, is not off trend.
Yeah. We've got one more question here before we end. What's the biggest challenge with scaling? Money?
Yeah, it was money. It was, Movember is unique in that we're the one organisation in 21 countries in the health sector, health foundations like us. We haven't found one like that. So it was, yes, you need money to scale, but it was also then, we're a global brand, we're a global organisation, but you need to be locally relevant, and it's the degree to which you localise the campaign in each country. And I remember, I know we're out of time, but I remember distinctly learning pretty quickly in America that Mo either was short for homo back in the day, Missouri, or Mormon. And if I can get a gay Mormon from Missouri to grow a Mo for Movember, I'm done.
Wow, look at that. Absolutely. Well, Adam, thanks so much. Let's give Adam a round of applause.
Thank you.